Hi, welcome to this video on introductions or on writing effective introductions. This video will cover 3 of the primary approaches to an introduction and give you a few tips and red flags, things to avoid when doing so. No matter which approach you choose, there are always 2 main purposes that any introduction should accomplish. The first one, you need to get enough of your reader's attention that they keep reading your paper. And the second one is, by the end of your introduction, readers should know what the paper is about and what will come in the rest of the paper. So those are the 2 goals. There are exceptions to the second one. Sometimes you have some strategy you're employing where you don't tell them what it's about enough, at the beginning, or maybe you're going to lead them along and then change their mind, trick them or something like that. That's okay if you execute it well. But if you don't have a good reason, then make sure people know what's coming. All right, the first type of introduction is the direct approach. And this is the one where you simply come right out and state what your paper is about. Just state your purpose right off the bat. It's great for audiences who want to get to the point immediately. And sometimes it works great if the audience is already interested in your topic. They just want to hear what it's about and they're hooked and it's interesting, then that's great. Go ahead and just state your purpose and you've got them. It also works well in very formal, objective writing situations where your audience doesn't expect any, engaging emotional appeal, because in that case that could be considered a distraction from your purpose, and it could be considered bad pathos. So just make your writing fit your writing situation. Here's an example. 4 simple steps can help homeowners sell their house more quickly and for more money, even in a buyer's market. So if you're writing to homeowners in a buyer's market who are trying to offload their property quickly, that's exactly what they want to hear, right? So why start out with the story? Once upon a time, Tommy wanted to sell his house. Oh, but it's a buyer's market, he said woefully. No need to do anything like that. Just lump right into it. And from that point, if it's in a brochure or something, at least you can launch straight into your next point, your 4 points. The first step is to mow your lawn or whatever. If it's a longer paper though, not just a brochure, that feels kind of short, doesn't it? So you'll probably want to spruce it up and make it read a little bit better. And you can do that by adding a few more interesting ways to say it. Here's an example. Selling a home quickly and for top dollar takes a combination of preparation and luck. So now you've already hinted at what the paper's about, selling your home, and you've got your readers thinking, oh, preparation and luck, tell me more, right? You've hinted at something they might want to know about. As a homeowner looking to sell, you'll find that good preparation will increase your luck in the sales process. This paper will explain 4 simple steps that you should take before putting your home on the market. So it does the same job, it just sounds a little bit more complete of a thought, maybe a little bit more engaging. All right, the second approach is the conversational approach, and this is the one where you start discussing your topic. Maybe you don't state your purpose outright, but you start talking about it. Oftentimes, you'll do this by using statistics, examples, quotations, questions that kind of introduce the idea and hopefully capture their attention and start discussing it. When you do this, make sure your first sentence, your first paragraph, everything, but especially your first sentence, make sure it's interesting. Here's some common mistakes people make. In this paper, I will discuss, so, you're telling them where the paper's going, great, but it's not the most interesting way, right? Who cares what you're going to discuss? Just get on discussing it. Make it really apply to the audience. Here's another one that's pretty weak. Webster's Dictionary defines introduction as, well, congratulations, you've now started talking about introduction. You've conversationally introduced your idea. But not only is that really boring, but it's really juvenile. It feels kind of like 7th grade, so please avoid that one as well. Compare it to this example. I never expected to be raising a child with Down syndrome, and I certainly never expected to feel grateful that my child came this way. Doesn't that grab so much more information? You've started talking about having a kid with Down syndrome, so you've introduced your topic, but you've also told some information. In fact, in this case, you've kind of told half of a story. Now readers know that you've got a kid with Down syndrome, but maybe they want to know how you reached that conclusion or state of mind that gratitude for it, right? So they want to hear more. Here's another example. When I reached the top of my first 18,000-foot mountain, I felt none of the excitement and elation that I had been expecting for weeks. In this case, not only did you start the paper right off, you're on top of a very, very tall mountain, so an audience interested in that, maybe you've got their attention, but it starts right at the action, right on top of the mountain. It doesn't say, before I went to climb a mountain in Chile, I worked out and climbed some mountains around home, and then I flew down there and went through customs. See, all that boring information, not as good as jumping straight to the action. I'll probably mention that again when I talk about the third style of introduction, as you'll see. Here's another one. The face of sports photography was changed forever with the introduction of waterproof miniature HD cameras. So again, not only have you said, this paper will discuss, little miniature HD cameras, but you've given some more information about changing the face of sports photography. And if your audience is interested in this, if they're into this or they want to be into this, then you're talking about them. You've got their attention that way as well. One of the errors that often happens here is, and one great way to start out with a question, with this first sentence that's not very interesting, is to start and be much too broad. I like to call this one the painfully obvious, right? For example, Utah is a state. Well, once again, you're talking about Utah, great, but it's so obvious it hurts. Here's another one. Ever since the beginning of time, mankind has struggled with music, teenagers, power, slavery, nutrition, getting good signal on your phone, whatever your paper happens to be about, right? So you can say something a little more interesting than that. Another important thing, very important, is to remember to stay focused. And that means whatever your purpose is about of the paper, every single paragraph should clearly support that purpose. But this is especially true of the introduction. And oftentimes when people are writing an introduction and starting to talk about it, they'll do two problems. They'll introduce two problems. First off, maybe they'll talk about something that doesn't exactly match the paper's purpose and then try and wrench it around to make it match afterward. Don't do that. Start off in the right direction. Otherwise it sounds disjointed and funny, and you create this first impression, and then the readers have to adjust that afterwards. So don't do that to them. The second thing that sometimes happens is if you start talking about things that you're not going to discuss in your paper that are really irrelevant to your paper, then people expect to hear more about this. Here's some examples. The U.S. State Department recognizes 195 nations spread across the face of the earth. By the way, I should tell you, these two next two examples, these are introductions to papers about traveling and how you should travel and how great world travel is. So with that in mind, listen to this. The U.S. State Department recognizes 195 nations spread across the face of the earth. It's not bad, right? You're saying there's a bunch of countries. Get going. But watch what happens next as it fine-tunes this claim it just made. This doesn't include Taiwan, which operates as a separate country from the People's Republic of China, but since each of these countries claims to own the other, the U.S. opted in 1979 to recognize China instead of Taiwan. Okay, you're providing way too much detail. You're going off on a tangent already, so don't do that in the intro. Here's another example of irrelevant items, extraneous stuff. When I graduated from high school, my father offered me a car as a graduation gift. My parents had divorced 3 years earlier, and I think he wanted to make up for some of the distance that had come between us since then. This impression was strengthened when I saw the car he wanted to buy me, a brand new convertible M2 Spider. It was the car of my dreams, and I closed my eyes and imagined flying through the canyon, top down, wind in my hair, all summer long. But despite the temptation, I turned the car down and instead asked for a trip around the world. Well, besides the fact that this kid sounds kind of spoiled or lucky, however you want to see it, if he's not going to talk about his dad and the canyon, don't bring those up. If you are going to talk about, your life and, family and stuff like that, that's fine, because that's probably interesting. That can get your attention, a bit more of a story and all. But last one, I think, for this point is to remember to write clearly. Don't make your readers work too hard, especially in the introduction. Make it easy for them to follow and know what it is you're talking about. All right, the next approach, style of introductions is the narrative approach. A narrative is a story, right? And stories are generally designed to help readers relate to, kind of imagine themselves in the situation, create this visual thing, along with the two other main goals: get their attention and to induce them to read more, and tell what the rest of the paper will be about. If you start out with a story, be sure to get to the point quickly. Unless your writing is so interesting, so engaging, that all your readers are going to keep reading until they find out what the point is, and even then sometimes, let them know quickly what the point is about. As a general rule of thumb, by the way, your introduction story, if you use one, should not take up more than about 10% of the total paper. So if you're writing a 10-page paper, you better finish up that story by the end of page 1. All right? Now, if the story is providing a lot more information about your topic, you can get away with having it a little bit longer. And if you get to the point quickly, you can also get away with it a little bit longer. And one way to do that is to mention the paper's point within the story. Just hint at it. Let readers know kind of what's coming up soon. Here's an example. My wilderness survival merit badge was the last thing on my mind as I headed out the door for a weekend backpacking trip. You know what's going to happen, right? I mean, you don't know exactly, but you know that this author will require those survival skills. So it's kind of telling half a story, right? Readers want to know the rest. Here's another example. Little Sarah looked up into her mother's eyes and smiled. It always surprised Laura how much that innocent smile could melt away the stress of insufficient sleep and keeping her baby fed and changed. The thought of establishing a relationship that would help guide her baby through her dangerous teenage years scarcely crossed her mind. Then you could go on with the story. Maybe you think that's too much. Maybe that kind of gets in the way of the story. You could do or make it a little shorter. But anyway, there's an example of mentioning. Now, what do you think this paper is going to be about? Do you think it's going to be about having a cute little baby? Or do you think it's going to be about establishing a mother-daughter relationship to help the kid, right? Because you've hinted at it. And now the rest of the story, as you tell it, is more interesting too, because moms are like, I want to know about that relationship. How do I form it, right? And they're interested, and it makes your story even better. As you tell your story, stay focused on your paper's purpose. Make the story exactly align with what that purpose is. If it's a little bit off, it doesn't quite relate, revise it until it does. Otherwise, again, you create this first impression and readers have to change their mind, and that takes brain work, and it seems awkward, and it's not awesome like it could be. Here's another example. I walked into my apartment and found it a total mess. Dirty dishes sat in the sink, and empty bottles were strewn across the carpet and furniture. My TV had been left on, although no one was home, and a cold breeze blew through the open window. My roommates had held yet another weekend party while I was away at home. Now, what do you think this paper's about? Having good roommates, maybe? Cleanliness? I don't know. With introduction, makes you guess these things, right? What if I told you this paper was about underage drinking? Does that story really align with it? It almost diminishes its importance by saying, when kids, underage people, drink, they make messes in their apartment, right? So, it's okay if it gets your attention, but it could be more on topic. And like I mentioned earlier, when you're telling a story, start at the action or right before it. Start at the climax of the story, and then do a little flashback for any important information you may have, background information you need. This is so helpful to not only make it way more interesting, but also it makes it much shorter. Because if you start with telling all the background information, your story can just take off and carry you away, drag you along like a herd of wild horses, as you're given all this background information. But when you put background information in a flashback, it comes out much shorter and cleaner and more interesting. And finally, brush up on your descriptive and narrative skills. And I'll make some more videos, post here on the University of Life Writing Center to teach you lots of those skills so you can do a great job. So hope that's helpful, and stick around. Also, I'll be making a video introduction practice in which I'll take a whole bunch of example introductions. Some of them I'll make up, some I'll take real ones from my university students, and we'll evaluate them and point out some of the strengths they have and show how to improve some of them according to things we've said here and whatever else we come up with.